This is a stimulus update and daily news report. Got some important updates to share with you. President Biden's poll numbers hits an all-time high for 11 months, just as former President Trump's poll numbers hit an all-time low for the past 11 months. I'll give you details on that. And finally, we have an update from the White House of what's going on with inflation and when we could see it doing better. I'll play the video clip of what is said there. $750 IRS tax refunds are going out to certain Americans. I'll let you know who qualifies for that, and millions of $250 tax rebates are being sent out. I'll let you know who qualifies for that as well, and I'll give you some other important updates as well. If you appreciate the fact-based, fast-paced updates, hit the like button down below. So Biden's approval hits 11-month high as Trump's falls to one of his lowest. So after a troubling year in the polls, President Joe Biden's approval rating is finally on an upswing, reaching an 11-month high just 7 weeks before the midterm elections. At the same time, former President Trump, who held onto a favorable rating since leaving office, is seeing one of his lowest post-presidency marks. So this was an NBC poll released on Sunday and found that 45% of registered voters approved President Biden's overall job, a figure up 3 points from last month. And then when it comes to former President Trump, right here, according to poll, 54% of voters have a negative view of Trump and 34% of voters have a positive view. So looks like, I guess, former President Trump and President Biden are big figures when it comes to the Democrat versus Republicans in the midterm election. So I'll keep you updated on that. And then stimulus update. Despite recession fears, unemployment claims keep dropping. Weekly jobless claims have fallen to 5 weeks in a row. That should ease consumers' minds about a recession, but it also spells bad news for stimulus aid, meaning that if jobless claims are low, and I guess the economy does better, then most likely there won't be any stimulus checks. If official recession is announced, then most likely there will be recession stimulus checks, just as there was in 2001 and 2008. So at this point, although prices are really high at 8.3% inflation rate, still I think people probably need some help there, especially if those who are on a really tight budget, living paycheck to paycheck before, now everything is 8.3% higher, even higher at the grocery store. Something needs to give there. Take a look at this video clip right here from the White House about inflation.
It's a geopolitical question, but it really is an economic risk question, given we've put the CHIPS Act in place and other things. The president yesterday on 60 Minutes said quite, I think, directly to the American public that if China were to invade Taiwan, that U.S. would send troops. Right after that, almost as usual, because we've now had this situation happen several times, the White House puts out a statement saying that's not exactly what he meant, that there's this idea of strategic ambiguity. What is the American public supposed to think of that? What is the global world supposed to think about that in terms of how they assess, let's just keep it to economics, the economic risk of something happening?
Well, I think the American people understand now the economic risks of global supply chains and the challenges facing our country. Let's point back to what we already know has happened. An unprovoked war in the Ukraine has upended global oil prices, but that has meant challenges for people here in the United States. And the pandemic, which meant that when countries overseas had to shut down a factory because people were sick and American factories couldn't get the parts they needed, that meant Americans couldn't go to the store and buy the thing that they wanted. It meant that maybe they couldn't get a new car when they wanted it. We understand the fragility of these supply chains,
right,
and that's why that has been
and therefore
a primary
we're sending
focus.
in troops, or we're not, if there is an
I'm not
invasion.
I'm not going to speak to the geopolitical issues. Let's keep to the economics here this morning.
But
what we know,
but the geopolitical issue creates the economic risk issue.
And we know that there's always risk. It's why this administration, for the past year and a half, the economic agenda has been focused on addressing those risks and making sure that we're mitigating for the American people. The CHIPS and Science Act is about that. It's about saying We understand there's still going to be global supply chains, but we need to make sure that we have that capacity here in the United States so that when things get tough, when geopolitical challenges happen, Americans are not left in the lurch. It's about making sure that we are focused on an economy that can deliver for the American people. And that has been the focus of the bipartisan infrastructure law, making sure we have that infrastructure, making sure we have access to the technologies we need through the CHIPS and Science Act, and making sure that we are addressing our need for clean energy, which is, as we know, energy powers everything, and making sure that we are putting America on that path, giving industry just that little bit of help it needs so that those markets can function well for people. That has been our focus. That's how you deal with the risk.
The stock market obviously has all these things wrong. That's a pretty picture that you've painted, but it seems like mortgage rates have doubled in the last year. Gas prices are still up probably 60 or 70% from they were before the president took office. Inflation's running at 8.3%. 40-year highs. It just
gas prices have come down phenomenally, Joe. I mean, you cannot deny that. That is a decrease of over $1.30.
They were $2 and change when he came into office, and
we've had a geopolitical crisis that has upended oil markets, which is why the president is so focused on moving us all towards electric vehicles.
If you're going to blame everything on the pandemic for inflation, then you've got to acknowledge that reopening after the pandemic is why we just got back to basically the job that we had before the pandemic. The 10 million just got us back to even.
But we are putting ourselves on a better path now. When you look over the kinds of things that we've done, we have been focused on all of the different kinds of risks that you just mentioned. And recovering from a pandemic is hard. What we've seen, for businesses is that, even a short shutdown can upend their processes, their ability to produce, and you're behind. And so what we want to do is put in place the kind of make sure that we are facilitating the kind of economy where that has more resilience. So when these challenges happen, you have a little bit more breathing room, a little bit more room so that you don't have to shut everything down, so that you don't have these kinds of crises in the future. But certainly, it is true that inflation is higher now than it was before, but it is also true that we've seen some signs of abatement in the past couple of months, and that we're doing everything we can to get that back down. And again, that is why the Fed will be doing its job.
What are your thoughts there? Do you agree, disagree? Could the White House and the Biden administration be doing a much better job about inflation? Let me know your thoughts there. All right, so IRS refunds of $750 coming soon. How to know if you qualify. So refunds from the Internal Revenue Service worth an average $750 are expected to be paid out to a select group of people by the end of September. So the IRS announced in late August it would waive the penalties for individuals and corporations who file their 2019 and 2020 taxes late. It is also providing refunds or credits to approximately 1.6 million taxpayers who already paid their penalties for filing late. So basically the refunds will average to $750 per person. And coming from the IRS, they said besides providing relief to both individuals and businesses impacted by the pandemic, this step is designed to allow the IRS to focus its resources on processing backlog tax returns and taxpayer correspondence to help return normal operations for the 2023 filing season. So that's the latest from the IRS. And then Virginia is sending out millions of $250 tax rebates. Here's how to find out if you'll get one. So over the last few days, the Virginia Department of Taxation began the process of sending out roughly 3.2 million tax rebate payments of up to $250 per person, $500 per couple. But not everyone's getting one. Excuse me. Had something there, had to clear it out. Eligibility for one-time rebates, a result of huge revenue surpluses filling up the state coffers, depends on how much a filer owed in taxes in 2021. So, depending on your situation, if you live in Virginia, looks like it could be a $250 check. And at the budget meeting last week, tax officials said they expect to send out about 1.9 million checks and 1.3 million direct deposits at a rate of roughly 250,000 rebates per day. So, those checks are going out in Virginia, and that is all the news that I have for you today to hopefully brighten your day a bit. Here's my daughter Bella's tip of the day.
Hi guys, this is Bella. This is the tip of the day. I tell you the one thing that you should do. When you feel something and you don't really feel good, then be grateful what you have. Be thankful, because the next day it might not be there. So that's what I wanted to say. True or false? Bye.
Thank you so much for watching. Appreciate all of your support. Yeah, Bella is doing really good when it comes to piano and swimming and all that. She's really improving a lot. Really impressive. Hopefully you have a great rest of your day. If you want to check out any of my other videos on my other channels, click right up here, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Be safe. Thank you for watching.